Welcome and thank you for joining us today for an announcement and a demonstration of something I think you're going to be really excited about. Over the last couple of years, we've been working hard to digitize several of the processes that we use here. As you've seen, digital fellowship cards, of course, digital voting, hallelujah. We've had digitizing of the application process for ministerial credentials, and now that in Spanish as well. So we've been working toward this goal. Well, the newest development that we're going to share with you today is we've been able to digitize the process to submit forms regarding churches, church status form, church update form, and the church no longer in fellowship form. This is going to ease the process greatly. You simply fill it out online. When you click submit, there's no printing it out, no emailing it, no physically having to print it out to sign it. It's all done digitally. I think you're going to be very pleased with this. Our IT department, as well as key representatives of church administration, have worked so hard on this process, and I want to offer my thanks to them. Some of them are going to demo this to you now. There may be a bug or two to work out as we go forward, but this is going to be a great step forward in your being able to communicate to us the growth of churches in your district, updates on their status, and for us to be able to communicate back with your district. It's going to take a lot of bugs out of the system, and we're very excited about it. So thank you for joining us. Watch this, watch it repeatedly, learn how to use these forms. It's a great step forward for us, and I'm really excited about it.
Hi, my name is Catherine Groves, and I work for UPCI Church Administration. Today, I'm going to walk you through the online process for church records forms on wa.upci.org. So the first step is that we're going to type in our address bar, wa.upci.org. When you come to this page, the first thing you'll need to do is log in using the login button in the upper right corner. If you know your email and your password, you can enter that information here and click login. If you don't know your login information, you can use this forgot your password button. You do need to know the UPCI, the email that's associated with your wa.upci.org account. This can be the same login that you have for UPCI ministers. If you're not sure what email to use, this is going to default to the email that's your primary communications email for UPCI. So if you know your email and password, you can enter that information here and click login. If you don't know your password, you've never logged in before, you can use this forgot your password link at the bottom of the screen. Let's click log in. Now, if we look at the tabs at the top of the page, we're going to be using the tabs Churches. If you click here, click Church Record Forms. It's asking you to fill in two options. First, to select your role, and second, to select your form. Today, I'm logged in as Brother Scott Graham, and I'm going to be testing an example as a pastor. So because I'm a pastor, I have the option here to operate and edit my church. As a pastor, the only form that I will have access to is the church update form. So I select my role as the church, and I select the form, church update form. Then we'll click go. On this page, I will see any churches that I'm connected to as the pastor. So you can see there's a self-governing work, a daughter work, and a preaching point. And I am here listed as the pastor. I can see the district. And the last thing I'll point out on this page is this status and waiting on column. Because these are blank, it means that there are currently no forms pending. There's no information here. So it's not waiting on anyone. There are no forms pending. Now, as pastor, if I'd like to update some of the information on my church, let's say I need to update the address on this self-governing church. The way that I'll do that is by clicking the blue account number. Now on this page, the first piece of information that I see is the directory listing. This is how this church record will be printed in the UPCI church directory. So it's important to make sure that this information is correct. In the table below, you'll see the option to edit different pieces of information. For example, the name of the church, the address of the church, the contact information like the phone number and the email address. And another really important piece of information here are the languages in which services are available at this church. This is an important piece of information because it's connected to our UPCI church locator. So if there are people in your area who are trying to find a church with specific language options, this information is very important to helping them locate your church. Now, for this example, let's say that I moved a few streets down. So I'm going to backspace over the address, and my church is going to move to 123 South Street. And let's say I'm in the same city, the same state, the same zip code. For example, the only thing I'm changing is the street number. And in my comment, I will say the church has moved to a new building. See address changed. Submit these changes. Now, look at the directory listing at the top. The text in black is the new updated directory listing based on the information I just gave it, 123 South Street. The information in red here is the old directory listing, the previous information that was here. If you scroll down and you look at the table where we entered our information, you can see the same thing is true. The old address is in red, 124 Main Street, Northeast. The new address that I just entered is in black. Now, on this page, I still have the option to continue editing and adding information until this is 100% correct. So let's say, for example, I wanted to change this to 123 South Street, Northeast. Because I realized I forgot that information. If I click Submit Changes, it edits again. Until you click that last button to submit this to church administration, you can continue to make changes. This is going to act like a preview, and you can continue updating the information until you're comfortable with the new listing. So the first step here is to, like it says, verify and submit the changes for this account. This is mostly looking at the name of the church, the mailing address, and the contact information. The second step, if there's a change in the pastoral record, you'll take care of that here and make sure that everyone is coded appropriately. And then the last step that you have is to mark this ready for review. So as a pastor, the last thing that I'll do is click Mark Ready for Review. Now, as a pastor, I see this review page. I see that I have submitted CUF, which stands for Church Update Form. I have approved it, and it's waiting on church administration. So I can see the new directory listing, 123 South Street, Northeast. I can see the date and time it was submitted, and I see that my district is correct. So as a pastor, this is one way that you can submit a church update form to your district. This information, the district has a dashboard where you'll see this information. You can certify that it's correct and be updated throughout the process. As I mentioned, the only form that pastors have access to is the church update form. So for our pastor demo, that covers it. Now I'm going to log in as a Missouri district superintendent, and I'll show you how the same form looks like from the district side. All right, so I'm logging into wa.upci.org with credentials for the Missouri District Superintendent. The process works the exact same way. Use the tab Churches and select Church Record Forms. Now you can see my role here does not say church role. Now I'm interacting as the district, so my role that I've selected says district role. So you can see now the form options have changed. As a district, you're going to have the ability to submit 3 different church records forms: the church no longer in fellowship form, the church status form, and the church update form. The other things in this list, I can explain them. They're not necessarily forms, but they're other ways to view your church records information that might be helpful. The forms that we have here are the church no longer in fellowship form, the church status form, and the church update form. As a district official, you're probably aware that there are other forms. For example, our affiliation forms and disaffiliation forms. Right now, if you need to access those forms, continue to submit those as a PDF like you normally do. We're going to continue the example of a church update form. So I've selected district role. I've selected the church update form. Now I'm going to click Go. So now that I've logged in as the district, I see the records for all of the churches in the Missouri district. This is a good time to point out the ability to search and filter this page. If you know the name of the church, you can enter that information here. If you know the location of the church, thinking about the city that a church is located in, you can search here. And finally, you can search by the pastor's name. Another feature that's helpful here is this pending updates option. If I say yes, look at the churches that are pending updates, I'll see a screen that only shows me churches that have a pending update form. So for example, I can see that Pastor Scott Graham submitted a form to edit his self-governing church. And if I click on it, I can see the old address is 124 Street Northeast and the new address is 123 South Street. If I scroll down, I can see his comment. So as the district, you're going to be able to see all the forms that have been submitted by pastors on the church update form, and you'll be able to submit forms as a district. So going back to our example, let's start a church update form. And I'm going to filter this list of churches to just look at churches for Pastor Graham. Now in this example for a church update, I'm going to select the Preaching Point account. I do this by clicking the account number here. And now in this example, I'm going to change the church's phone number. And I'm going to add a language option. So right now, this Preaching Point just speaks English, but I'm going to hold the control button to select multiple languages. And I'm going to also select English, and I'm going to select American Sign Language. And whenever I scroll, I can verify that all three of those languages have been selected. You also see the directory listing for this Preaching Point if you need to make any edits. And finally, before I submit as the district, I'm going to make a comment. So I will say updating phone number and church language data per conversation with Pastor Graham. All right, and now that I've completed that information, I click the green Submit Changes button. This is going to work the same way. I see the church phone number, and I can see the old language was Spanish, and now I currently have multiple languages selected here. I can see the comment. I don't need to make any changes to the pastoral record. I'm going to mark this ready for review. Now it's going to default, after you submit the form, it's bringing you to this review page. So I can see CUF, there's a church update form that is waiting on CA or church administration, and I can see the directory listing for this church. If you want to go in and look at this information again, you just click the button and you can scroll here. You can continue to make changes until it's been reviewed by church administration. So that's the first form, the church update form. Now, let's say as a district that I'm reviewing this form and I realize I forgot to make a pastoral change. I updated the phone number, I updated the languages, but I forgot that I needed to also submit a change to the pastors for this Preaching Point. So, until it's been reviewed by church administration, you can continue to go in and make changes. So what I'm going to do here in this Add a New Pastor under Step 2, you search the pastor using their last name. So I'm going to use an example. This person's name is Molly Moore. So I'm going to search Moore, comma Molly. And I see this person's information has appeared. I'm going to select their position. And I'm going to say, no, they are not the Mother Church pastor. I click Add this pastor. And now I can see that we have Scott Graham listed as the Mother Church pastor, and Molly Moore is listed as the pastor for this Preaching Point that we're working on. I can also go here and update my comment, adding Molly Moore as preaching point pastor. Submit those changes and go back. So from your review page, here's the district. You can see the form that was submitted earlier, the church update form for the autonomous work, changing the address, and I can see this church update form that was submitted for the preaching point. We made a couple changes here. If you want to go back and look at them again, you can see the old information is here in red, and the new information is going to be what's filled in the blanks. So that takes care of the church update form. That was the first form we're looking at today. The next form that we're going to look at is called the church status form. There are two main reasons you would use this form. The first is that you have an existing work and you need to update its status. For example, if you have a daughter work that has progressed to self-governing status, a preaching point progressing to daughter work status. The other example that you would use this form for is if you have a new church. So we're going to do both examples today, and I'm going to start by showing you a progression. So again, I'm going to select a church the same way we did in a church update. You have this list of churches. You can filter by different information. I'm going to filter by pastor name. And the church that I want to update here is this daughter work. We're going to progress this daughter work to self-governing status. So the way I'll do that is by clicking the account number here. Now, this form is going to look similar to the church update form, but it is a little different. At the top, you will see the directory listing for this church. The first question it's going to ask you is, what status is this work? So we started as a daughter work, and you can see that from the listing here, daughter work of Gilmore First United Pentecostal Church. I'm going to change this church to self-governing status. As a district, you will also have the ability to indicate whether this church should be flagged as NAM status. This form is relatively simple. What I'm going to put in the comment here is just indicating that our board met and has approved this church to move from daughter work status to self-governing status. And then once you've reviewed this information and you believe it is correct, you can click submit. Again, you'll have the option here, like on the church update form, to edit and manage your pastors. For this example, I'm not going to make any changes to the pastors. If you do want to make a change here, you can remove the previous pastor of the mother self-governing church, and you can search and add a new pastor for the new self-governing church. Once I've reviewed this information and believe it's correct, I'm going to mark ready for review. This will indicate to church administration that it is ready for them to process. Now I can see here in my page, CSF stands for Church Status Form. I can see that again, it's waiting on church administration, and I submitted it today. I'm in the Missouri district. Now, I said there might be two reasons to use a church status form. The first reason might be to indicate a progression or a change in an active work. The other reason we might want to use this form is if we need to add a new work to our district. So on the top of this page, if you click add new work, it's going to produce a blank form where, because this is new, we don't have any information on this church, so we need to fill in all the information. You're able to select the status of the work. So if it's a new preaching point, if it's a new daughter work, if it's a new self-governing work, it's going to start the same way. So I'm going to start by entering the name of the church. I'm going to start a new preaching point. I'll say the date it was established is today. It's in the Missouri district, and we are in Missouri District Section 1. The location here is First Street. We're in this city. Oops. And the state is Missouri. This information here is not required information, the phone number, the email, the web address, but it is helpful information. If you have it to include, because we're doing an example, I'm not going to take the time to fill that out. I'm starting a preaching point on First Street, and it's going to speak English and Spanish. As a district, I'm going to try to give some information here that's going to be helpful to church administration. So I'm going to say this is a new preaching point under Pastor Graham. Now, this part is important. Because I'm starting a new preaching point, it needs to be connected to a mother church. The way that we're going to search and identify that mother church is first by starting with the name of the city, then the name of the church, and then the name of the district if there are multiple churches with that name. So under Pastor Graham, he's pastoring in Gilmore. So you can see that as I type that in, I can see the churches that show up with that record. This was the preaching point, the daughter work, and the self-governing work. So I'm going to select the self-governing work for the mother church. If I had accidentally selected the wrong church, you just click that button and it removes the connection. So let's say, for example, I had accidentally selected this preaching point and that was incorrect. You just click remove the church and then you can search again. Gilmore, and if I knew that the name was First United, okay, there's only one church that fits that description, select. The next question here is it's asking you how you would like this church, this new preaching point, to be listed in the directory. I'm going to list the mother church pastor only. And here you would fill out how you would like the directory listing to appear for this church. As an example, I'm going to leave this information like this, but I would recommend typing this out as you would like to see it in the directory. Once this is correct, I'll click submit. All right, and because I didn't type my information here, you can see it was just as I entered, so it's important to enter this information. Let's see. Just for example, I'm going to come and fill this in. The name of our church was First Church. First Street. All right, and if I click submit again, you'll see that my directory listing updated based on the information that I gave it. The next step that we have here is to search for pastors of this church. Oops. I'm going to search for Graham, Scott, and add as pastor. And I made a mistake. I meant to add Pastor Graham as the mother church pastor, so you'll see me remove that example. So search Graham, S. Now, this part, I was a little too quick last time. You want to be careful to select the right position here. This is how they're going to be coded in our system. And I'm going to indicate that, yes, he is the pastor of the mother church, and add this pastor. All right, this looks correct. So now that I have this information, if you wanted to add a second person here and list them as the new preaching point pastor, you can also search and add them and select the correct codes to do that. For this example, I'm going to say this is complete, and I'm going to mark this ready for review. So now I have this church status form waiting on church administration, and I can see it's this new church, First Church on First Street, zip code 12345, pastored by Scott Graham. And the CSF, again, is going to stand for church status form. So we've taken an example from the church update form, the church status form. The last example that we're going to look at today is this church no longer in fellowship form. It works similarly. The first thing that you do is indicate what church you want to submit the form for. We're going to search here, limit our options to just the churches that Pastor Graham is connected with. And I'm going to go back to this Spanish preaching point that we edited earlier. This is the church that I'm going to choose to mark as inactive. So you do that by selecting the account number, The first thing that we're going to do is indicate the reasons why this church has left. Now, this is an important piece of information at the headquarters level that our team, our executive leadership, does monitor. They pay attention to these reports and the number and the percent of churches that are becoming inactive with UPCI. Just because we submit a church no longer in fellowship doesn't necessarily mean that that church has actually closed his doors and has stopped worshiping. There can be other reasons why a church chooses to not be in fellowship with the UPCI. Now, these reasons here help give our executive leadership team some insight to what those reasons are. Are our churches closing their doors and, stopping to offer services in the communities? Or is there a reason that we see churches merging together? Or is it related to the pastor? Are churches selecting pastors that are not associated with the UPCI? Have pastors chosen to drop their credentials with the UPCI? For financial reasons, for other reasons. This is really important information to our executive team. And so filling these forms out completely and with care provides really helpful information. For example, I'm going to say that this preaching point is no longer in existence. It no longer serves its community. It doesn't exist. And the main reason that it failed is because we had a lack of transition. And I'm going to say that this was effective at the beginning of this month. That was their last week to do services, so that's the effective date, not the date I'm submitting it, but the date that the church was no longer in fellowship with UPCI. And then in my comment, this information will also help us to analyze the data and understand what dynamics are happening leading to these churches no longer being in fellowship. So for example, Pastor Graham reported that the preaching point pastor has moved out of state and no one is able to take over the existing preaching point. Last service held on 8/1/24. And I'll click save once I've completed this. Now all the forms are complete. I'm going to mark this as ready for review for church administration. So I can see this church no longer in fellowship form, CNIF. That form is here. It's waiting on church administration, and I can see it's related to the preaching point that we just submitted. Now you may be asking, why are there two forms here? Well, what we're looking at is the district review page, and by default, it's going to show me, because I just edited that preaching point, it's going to show me any other forms that are active and pending church administration related to that account. So in the example we did earlier, right, I did an update form for this preaching point. And that was kind of a silly example to update the work right before I closed it. You may choose to do that to give us the most updated and accurate information. In reality, you're probably not going to be submitting multiple forms for the same church at the same time, but this is an example. So if I wanted to see all of the churches that I had pending forms, if I remove that account number filter, now, as the Missouri District, I can see all of the forms that we've submitted here today. We did a church update form for the self-governing church. We did another church update form for this preaching point. We did a church status form to progress the status of the daughter work church to a preaching point. We submitted a CNIF, or a church no longer in fellowship form, on this preaching point to close that work. And finally, we started another CSF, or church status form, to indicate a new preaching point. Now, from this page, we did a couple examples at the same time. Looking at this at a glance, you may not remember exactly what each example was, but that's why the comments that you leave are very helpful. If you click on the account number here and scroll to the bottom, we can see the information. I can see this is the new preaching point under Pastor Graham. So if you've submitted these churches, or if you have multiple people on your team who are going to be interacting with these forms, it is important to give us the most accurate and complete information, and that comment box can be a very helpful piece of information to keep everyone on the same page so forms don't get mixed up. Now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you another way to navigate to that page. Whenever you submit a form, if it's a church update, church status, or church no longer in fellowship form, once you complete that form, it's going to default show you the review page. The other way you can access that page is by selecting it here, where the same place we would select the form. If you select the button Review Forms and click Go, we just navigated back to that same page. And all the examples that I've done here are the same city, the same pastor. But if, for example, you were trying to find a church, a form that you had submitted and you knew the account number, or you knew the pastor, or you knew the location, you could come back and search this page to locate that more quickly. Now, the churches in your review page, you are only going to see the forms while they are pending church administration. So all of these, you can see they are pending, waiting on church administration. Once church administration processes these forms, we update our database. These are manually reviewed by our church records team, and they update our database here in church records. These will disappear from your queue. This is only going to show you the forms that are waiting. So if you have a question and you want to know if a form has been processed yet, you can do that by looking at this page. And if it's here, you know that we're still processing it. Once it disappears, it'll have been processed and you won't see it. The other way you'll know that it's been processed is once you go back, for example, and it's been processed and you come and you look, the information will be updated in the dashboard in wa.upci.org. Once it's been processed, you'll see that it is updated and that it is not waiting on anyone. So because we did these examples earlier, I'm looking at the church update form. You can see these churches, I'm still waiting on something. I'm still waiting on church administration. So this is another way that you can use this tool to understand how it's being processed by church administration and where your forms are in this process. Now, the last form, I'll give you a quick example. This option, District Church List Annual Review, this is related to the audit of active works that we do in August in collaboration with North American Missions and the district staff. So if you click on this page, what it will do is show you a form that looks like you are used to seeing in the audit. You'll see the section, the type of church. You'll see the section, the type of church, if it's self-governing, a daughter work, or a preaching point. You'll see how it's going to be listed in the directory. And you'll see the city, state, phone number, pastors. You'll see all this information listed here. Something new we've added is languages. You will see what languages that we have on file for your church. If there's no data here, it means that we have no data for your church. And again, this is important because those languages can be used on upci.org church locator to help people in your area find churches that offer languages that they're comfortable with. Now, in the audit process, you'll review this information, and if it's correct, you'll check that box and say, I've reviewed this. If anything is missing, just let us know what information is incorrect. This is going to help our office know what forms we can expect from your district. We still need the correct forms, whether that's a church update form or a church status form. We still need that to be submitted, but this will help our team to know what we can expect from your district. Now, just to recap, as a district, the superintendent, secretary, and admin are going to have access to update 3 forms on this form in WA. The church no longer in fellowship form, the church status form, and the church update form. As a pastor, you will have access to only the church update form. NAM directors have also been given access to some of these forms in WA. They can submit a church update form or a church status form. The only people who can submit a church no longer in fellowship form are the district superintendent, secretary, or admin. NAM directors do not have access to submit a church no longer in fellowship form. Now, a few things that I'll remind you of before I close out this video. This is in development, and once this form is completely ready to go, there will be automated emails once these forms have been processed to notify our district admins and district staff, not just administrators, but the superintendent and the secretary, those people that we have connected here in the district role on these forms. So you'll receive an email confirming what form has been submitted, that it's been processed by church administration, and you can save that for your records. Like I said, in the review page, those forms will disappear once they've been processed by church records. So if you keep a copy of any of these forms, be sure to save your screen or save that email and keep a copy for your records. The other thing that I want to remind you of is these forms, we do take comments and things that you'll enter. Assume that any information that you enter in these forms is not private. If you're making sensitive comments about the reason that a church closed and there's any private information that you do not want public, this is just a reminder that all of this information will be public. It'll be viewed by other members in the district admins, as well as our team here at UPCI Church Records. So please keep comments correct, accurate, and professional. The same comment goes for the information you put in these church update, church status forms. This information goes directly into our UPCI church directory. It's connected to the UPCI church locator. So it is important that the information you provide here is correct, professional, and accurate. Now, we've covered a lot of information in this video. If you have any questions, you can email churches@upci.org. That email is connected to our church records team. If you have any difficulties during this process, we are here to assist you and answer your questions. We hope that this is going to make submitting forms and maintaining your church records easier for you as a district. We want to provide resources that help you. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I hope it's been a help to you. Please feel free to reach out with any questions or comments. God bless.